All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. It's a special episode. This is episode 50. We've been doing the podcast since last fall, just the week after the Texas OU game. We've reached a milestone for us, 50 episodes. Today we're going to do an edition of From the Cheap Seats. We're going to talk about some Texas football. To me, this is the worst sports time of the year. There's no college sports. Baseball's winding down. Basketball's over. In about a month and a half, college baseball will be over. And then we'll just be left sitting there waiting for college football to start. There's Major League Baseball, which can be okay. There's pro basketball. I don't know how deep the playoffs go. I'm just not an NBA guy at all. And then there's hockey, which can be okay if your team's doing well. Dallas is doing okay right now. They're down 2-1. Looking to bounce back against the Kraken tonight, I believe. Probably an 8:30 start. Every single game they've played has been an 8:30 start. I don't understand that, but it is what it is. On the show today, we'll talk about some NFL draft recap from a Longhorn perspective. We'll talk about Maalik Murphy. 3 phases, 3 keys for the 2023 football team. There's been some early top 25s out there. We'll talk a little bit about what we've seen there, and then Prime's at it again. Prime being Prime. We'll talk about it. Longhorns in the NFL draft. Last year, not a single Texas Longhorns drafted. This year, they send 5 guys to the NFL through the draft, and a couple of guys signed some free agent contracts. We'll talk a little bit about each one of these guys. Bijan Robinson, round 1 to the Falcons. I think Bijan Robinson, typically running backs don't go this high anymore. The game has changed a lot. Used to be in the NFL, you had a marquee type running back. You had a number 1 running back, and that was the guy you wore out. You wore him to death. You ran him into the ground. And that's just what you did. Now there's so much rotation, guys moving in and out at the running back position, different types of offensive schemes, utilizing players for specific reasons at certain positions, Deebo Samuel, that you really don't have like this. You really don't have this need for like a premier. I got to give this guy the ball every single play running back anymore in the NFL. The other thing is it's just a bad investment for NFL teams. You know, I don't want to say running backs are a dime a dozen, but there's really good running backs in every single draft class. And they wear out really quickly because they take such a beating in the NFL. But I think you look at Bijan Robinson, and he's one of those guys that just is a special talent. His ability to run the football is outstanding. His vision is pretty good. It's not amazing. We've talked about him on the podcast. There's been some plays where he missed home runs trying to make home runs, and I think you got to take the good with the bad when it comes to a guy that can move as quickly laterally as he can and can cut back. And his vision on cutbacks is usually very good, but I think sometimes he gets so focused on going against the grain that he doesn't see what's right in front of him. I think what really separates Bijan Robinson from anybody in this draft is his ability to catch the football. Not only can he catch it just kind of out in the backfield on check downs and things like that, but this guy can get down the field and catch passes. He had a catch against Iowa State last season that was unbelievable. It would have been unbelievable for a wide receiver, and he did it as a running back. He lined up in the slot, ran a post, went up, made a great play, got 2 hands on a ball that was a little bit high. I think you can line Bijan Robinson up just about anywhere and he's going to make some hay for you. So I think the Falcons got a really good one in him. I haven't watched the Falcons play a lot. I said like back during the season that I think Bijan Robinson needs to find a team that can use him like Marshall Faulk. I think that's where he really shows his true colors. So if someone wants to try to figure out a way to feature him the way the Rams used to feature Marshall Faulk, I think he can be a really special player. DeMarvion Overshown goes in round 3 to the Cowboys. I know my wife's super excited about that. He's an interesting one to me. He could always play. Like, he makes plays. But to me, he just seemed like a tweener type of guy. I'm kind of surprised he went as high as he did. I thought he would get drafted, but I thought round 3 sounds pretty early in the draft just because he's a tweener. He's not a huge guy. He's like 6'2", 6'3", maybe 225, 230 pounds, which isn't obviously small whatsoever. And he does have I think he has room to grow. Like, I think he could continue to build muscle and put muscle on his. I think he can carry 245, 250 pounds easily and probably not lose a lot of speed. So the frame is there to bulk up and really be that prototypical linebacker in the NFL. But I don't know, man. The NFL it seems like it's kind of getting away from that in some respects. I don't know. We'll have to see. Like I said, he came into Texas as a safety. I believe he was a 5-star. He came in in the class that Tom Herman signed. I think he signed the top 3 safeties in the country that class. And really only DeMarvion Overshown has worked out at Texas out of that class, and he moved to linebacker. I think speed kills, and DeMarvion Overshown has a lot of it. He's a little. He's going to have to improve his strength. I'll just put it like that. 16 reps at the combine on 225 it's not a lot. I'm 45. I could go down to the gym right now without warming up and knock out 16. I could probably knock out 20 reps. And again, I'm just a 45-year-old fat dude. Not training the way DeMarvion Overshown should be training. So I don't know if it's just a legit strength thing or if he just didn't focus on it to get ready for the combine. You watch him play, I don't think it. I don't look at him as he plays and say he lacks upper body strength. He's able to get off blocks, and a lot of times he's able to beat blocks with his speed. It'll be interesting to see how Dallas tries to utilize him. I think he can be another Parsons, Micah Parsons type guy for them. You can line him up at linebacker, and he can do all the things that linebackers can do. But I think DeMarvion Overshown could be really dangerous off the edge as well, or up the middle. Picture Micah Parsons. I think DeMarvion Overshown is a smaller Micah Parsons. Roschon Johnson, round 4 to the Bears. I think the Bears got an absolute steal right here. Roschon Johnson is he's definitely top 5 all-time Texas Longhorns. The way that guy came in as a really highly rated dual threat quarterback, realized pretty quickly, I'm not going to get an opportunity to play quarterback. Hey, coach, I'll play where you need me to play. And he went to running back, and he's been amazing in his role as a backup running back at the University of Texas. I love his power. He's got good speed. It's not amazing speed. It's not like, elite track speed or anything like that, but he's got good enough speed. If he gets past you, not a lot of people are going to catch him. And he's just so physical. And I think, and I said this last fall during the football season, I think Roschon Johnson may have a better career in the NFL than Bijan Robinson. I just like the way he's a one cut and done guy. He gets the ball, he looks for a little bit of daylight, he cuts if he needs to, and he's through it. And all of a sudden you look up and he's 10, 15 yards down the field in a nanosecond. And he's breaking tackles on the way. I don't know. We'll see. I think the caveat to that is probably, does Bijan Robinson get into that type of offense we talked about just a minute ago? Does someone kind of build an offensive scheme, or at least a series of packages that they utilize frequently for Bijan. If somebody will do that, I think, all bets may be off. Bijan Robinson may be an all-timer if he can stay healthy. And obviously staying healthy is a sort of a goes without saying thing for all these discussions, right? But I really like Roschon. I think the Bears got a good one there. I'll be excited to watch and see how he does. Keandre Coburn, big snacks, round 6 to the Chiefs. These next two guys are, defensive line, defensive tackle guys for Texas that really, I think going into last season, you would have said, these guys are talented, but they're not draft-worthy type guys. So kudos to the Texas staff for being able to turn that around. The 2021 Texas defensive line, especially on the interior, was just bad and really bad against the run. And last year, outside of a couple of big plays, they gave up a big play against Alabama and they gave up a big play against TCU. And coincidentally, those two big plays, you could argue, were the difference in both of those games. They were both long touchdown runs. But outside of that, they just did not give up a lot on the ground to anybody. It was tough sledding to get through that bunch. So Keandre Coburn, he's going to be able to step in and help the Chiefs immediately, more than likely. Moro Ojimo, round 7 to the Eagles. Same deal. Guy that you looked at and you said, man, he's got talent. Every once in a while you see him make a play. See him do something that's pretty good. But there just wasn't enough consistency. And again, man, you looked at 2021 and that group just got run over. I'd add, as well as being really, really outstanding against the run last year, those guys in the middle of the defensive line for Texas last year were a huge portion of the pressure that Texas was able to get on quarterbacks. Texas didn't have a ton of sacks, but Texas got a lot of pressure on quarterbacks last year. And a lot of that pressure, the majority of that pressure came from up the middle. So congrats to all 5 of those guys. I hope they have great careers. It's good to see Texas Longhorns being drafted again. I think, not having draft picks isn't indicative of not developing talent or not being a good football program. But I think if you can continuously and consistently put guys in the NFL, that's how you get recruits to come to school, because it shows you can develop them. It's proof that you can develop good players. So good on Steve Sarkisian for making that go. I think next year we could be looking at double the amount of draft picks for the University of Texas, maybe even more. Maalik Murphy staying put. For those of you who listen to the show or follow me on TikTok, for those of you that follow me on TikTok, and you should be listening to the show or watching the show on YouTube, hint, check it out. You probably heard me talk about Maalik Murphy last year, and I said, I was just in the middle of a podcast. I don't even remember what I was talking about, and it just dawned on me I needed to talk about Maalik Murphy. I said, this dude can spin it, man. This guy's got an arm. He looks good. There's nothing he can't do. Scratch that. There is nothing that Quinn Ewers can do with the ball that Maalik Murphy can't do with the ball. Physically, like arm talent-wise, I think it's better. So I kind of had him pegged as a transfer at some point. I said, and all this depends obviously on how Quinn Ewers continues to develop, what type of season he has this year, as well as, how does Arch Manning develop? But in my mind, Quinn Ewers, there's a lot of people think Quinn Ewers is a number 1 draft pick next year. And he may be. I'm not saying he's not. I just want to see him go out and prove on the football field that he's worthy of that, right? I want to see not the hype and not the sort of potential of Quinn Ewers. I want to see like the dude that goes out there and says, I'm the number 1 pick, or I'm a top 10 pick, or at least a first round pick, right? I always kind of figured Quinn's going to be here at least 3 years. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, that's kind of the mindset I was in when I said I think Maalik Murphy's going to end up transferring. He went 9 of 13 for 165 yards and a touchdown in the spring game. Looked really, really good. Kicked up all kinds of controversy about who should be playing, who should get an extra. There were Texas Longhorn fans that said Maalik Murphy's the guy. He needs to be the guy. Quinn Ewers can't be the starter next year. Now, I think that's crazy. But again, that's Texas fandom, right? That like you were pre-programmed. It's part of your I'm a Texas Longhorn fan kit to strangely believe that the second string quarterback is better than the first string quarterback, almost no matter what happens. So there's that. That's just a culture thing. I don't know why it's like that, but I think that goes back to like Major Applewhite and Chris Sims. And there's been a lot of sort of QB controversies since then. But anyway, I think a lot of schools noticed that and said, man, Maalik Murphy, this is a guy we got to go try to get after. So there was SEC schools, Pac-12 schools, Big Ten schools apparently that were all reaching out. And I know they were following rules and weren't reaching out directly to Maalik Murphy. So somehow they were getting a hold of Maalik Murphy or getting a hold of Maalik Murphy's people and saying, hey, would he be interested in transferring? And Maalik says, no, I'm going to stay put. So I think based off of his performance in that spring game, you could surmise that Maalik Murphy could probably go to a lot of different schools in the United States and probably push for the starting position right off the bat. Not all, but a lot. Certainly some for sure. But he decides to stay, and I think there's a few reasons for that. I think really 2 main reasons. I think, again, the consensus is he only has to play behind Ewers for 1 more season. There's already pre-mock drafts showing Quinn Ewers as a number 1 pick, not the number 1 pick, but a round 1 pick in next year's NFL draft. And I think as long as he doesn't go out and lay a complete egg, I think that's probably fairly possible. Probable. I think the other thing is he came to Texas because he wanted to play for Steve Sarkisian. And I think in his mind, he sees himself as kind of the next guy up. We watched Steve Sarkisian at Alabama. He had 3 quarterbacks in a row that were all really good and won championships. He was instrumental in all 3 of those guys being where they're at. And so I think Maalik Murphy knows Steve Sarkisian can do that for people. And so it's refreshing. He's waiting his turn, something you don't see a lot from highly rated guys. And listen, Maalik Murphy was a 4-star when it was all said and done, but before he got hurt and before COVID, he was a 5-star. He was an Elite 11 guy. He has some talent. So I think it's great, again, just like we're putting people into the draft, I think it's great that it speaks very highly of Steve Sarkisian and what he's doing at Texas, that a guy like Maalik Murphy will turn down SEC, Pac-12, and Big Ten schools. My assumption is there was a lot of money being talked about, as much as you can legally talk about that stuff, right? He probably had the opportunity to go some places, start right off the bat, and make some money, make more money. I don't know what he's making at Texas, if he's making anything, but starting quarterback somewhere else in one of those conferences probably does all right NIL-wise. So to me, that's refreshing to see a guy that's in that type of position say, you know what? I can see the future. I can see the bigger picture here at Texas. I like Coach Sark. I know he can develop me. I'm going to stay here. 3 phases, 3 keys to 2023. Special teams. Need more touchbacks on kickoffs. We had the 13th least amount of touchbacks in all of Division I football last year. And I don't know. There's really only 2 scenarios I can think of that led to that. One, the kicker just doesn't have a strong enough leg to get it out of the back of the end zone. Or it was some sort of strategic thing to kick the ball to about the goal line and try to make tackles inside the 25. And I guess I get that to a point. Like, I understand the logic of it, right? If I can kick the ball to the goal line and I can tackle him short of the 25, 90% of the time I win, right? Maybe even less percentage of the time. Say it's 60-40. You win. As long as that 40%, you're holding them right around the 25-yard line. Like, over the course of a season, that adds up, right? And you're from a field position perspective, at least on the whole, you're looking much better than if you just booted it out of the back of the end zone and gave him the 25-yard line. But to me, the risk of kicking the ball to the goal line and allowing these guys to continuously run it out and try to make plays is not worth those. What are we talking? Realistically, and I haven't looked this up, but realistically, how many times are you kicking the ball off to the goal line? The guy brings it out and you're tackling him much inside of the 20-yard line, if at all. I would guess it's probably a fairly accurate, probable statement to say most of the time if they return it, they're returning it between the 20 and the 25-yard line. So at best, you might gain 5 yards of field position each kickoff. And at worst, the guy may bust one off and change a game. To me, there's not a bigger punch in the nuts during a football game than we just scored and we kick the ball off and that dude runs the damn thing back down to the 20-yard line on the other end or gets it in the end zone for a touchdown. Those are momentum busters. Same thing with punt returns. They can change the momentum of a game quick. But not only that, avoiding big plays, you avoid injuries by just kicking the damn thing out of the back of the end zone. Why risk the wear and tear on your guys for 5 yards a kick at best? So we need more touchbacks on kickoffs. I want to see the guy put the damn thing past the end line consistently. And if you don't have a guy with the leg to do that, that's a fucking shame. You're the University of Texas. Surely there is one kid in the state of Texas that can kick the ball out of the back of the end zone. That you could say, hey, man, you want to come be a Texas Longhorn and kick the ball out of the back of the end zone? Put yourself on display for the NFL? Surely there's at least one. More explosives in the return game. Texas was 25th in kickoff returns at just over 22 yards per return last year, 0 touchdowns. They were 42nd in punt returns at just over 9 yards per return. They did have 1 touchdown on punt returns. But it's not just touchdowns. Touchdowns are great on kick returns. We just talked about that. But it's being able to flip the field, I think, is the bigger thing. taking one back, especially on a kickoff or a punt return, is hard. That's why there's not a lot of. That's why you don't see it all that often. But you can certainly make up and flip the field with kickoff returns and punt returns. And I didn't feel like last year's team was all that explosive in that department. So the second key for the special teams is more explosives in the return game. Third key is, can we find a way to make the punter a weapon again? Texas was 59th in net punting at just over 38 yards per punt last year. And you look back and you talk about a weapon. Michael Dixon, when he was at Texas, was the freaking best player on the team in 2017. Certainly the most valuable player on the team. Maybe not the best football player, but definitely the most valuable player on the team. He killed it. I think Michael Dixon kept Texas in more games than a punter should be able to keep a team in games. I mean, he was ridiculous in his ability to down the ball inside the 10 from anywhere on the field, really. And when he had room, he could absolutely crush a punt. So Texas brings in Ryan Sanborn. It's a transfer from Stanford. He averaged 41 yards per punt last year. I think Dixon averaged 47 in 2017 and had an enormous amount of kicks inside the 20. 28, I think, was what it was. So the three keys on special teams: more touchbacks on kickoffs, more explosives in the return game, and let's make the punter a weapon again. Defense. Second phase of the game. Let's talk about these three keys for the defense. I think third and long. Texas gave up 41% on third down conversions last year, which was 89th in the country. So bottom half of the country there. And really, to me, it was the long ones. And maybe they just stand out to me because they were. Maybe this is not any different than what other teams see. I don't know. I try to watch a lot of games, but I obviously don't pay attention to the situations as much in other games as I do to the Texas games. But I feel like last year's team, and I honestly, going back to even the Tom Herman era, maybe even back to the Charlie Strong era, I just feel like third down has been so shitty to Texas defense for so long. There's some times they just cannot get off the field. And they had some long ones this year. There were two against Tech where it was third and a quarter of the field. And they gave up a touchdown on one of them, and a pass interference got a first down for Tech on another one. Those will always stand out to me because I was there, and they were both at pivotal moments of that game. Where if Texas could just get off the field and get the offense back on the field, they might be able to do something to put the game out of reach totally. And I know there were other third and longs because I scream at the TV every single weekend when it's third and anything past like 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. You can ask my wife. I'm always like, it's okay. It's third and almost impossible to get. Make a fucking play. So third and long, third down percentage period needs to get better for this team to take the next step on defense. Second key is pressure off the edge. Texas had 27 sacks last year, and we talked about it earlier. That's not a lot, but they had a lot of pressures. Only 8.5 of those sacks were from the edge. Texas registered 46 QB hits last year, QB hurries last year. And only 8 of those came from edge players. This has been another area where the Texas defense is struggling, and I think this one probably leads to the one we just talked about with third downs. You got to be able to make the quarterback get the ball out of his hands quick on third and long. You have to. And we just have not had the type of athletes you need to create that type of pressure off the edge. Joseph Asai was the last guy at Texas that was a legit edge presence. So it's been a long time. I think there's some bodies on the roster now that are that type of guys. We've talked about Ethan Burke. He'll be a sophomore this year. I think he could be that kind of guy. Colton Vasek is a guy that came in. He's a freshman this year. He'll be a freshman this year. He's got that unique type of athleticism. You got Barron Sorrell, who's coming back for his junior year, I believe. He showed some glimpses last year of being that type of guy. So number 2 key is let's get some pressure off the edge. And then the third key is force more turnovers. Texas was tied for 105th last year, forcing only 14 turnovers. Got to get that number up. And again, this is all just Texas. This is just me looking at what Texas did last year and things I think Texas needs to do to take the next step, which is, hey, let's win our conference and let's slip into the playoff. So the 3 keys on defense, third and longs, got to get better at those. Pressure off the edge, got to get much better there. Good news is there's not a whole lot of room to go down. You can kind of only go up. And then they got to force more turnovers. And I think the pressure off the edge is the main key. I think you get better pressure off the edge, you do better on third down defense. You get better pressure off the edge, you make quarterbacks make bad decisions with the ball. And you up that turnover statistic. Third phase offense. Key number 1, QB position has got to get it done this year. To me, getting it done does not mean that Quinn Ewers or whoever is the starting quarterback this year is sitting in New York City as a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. I don't think Texas needs that type of heroic effort from their quarterback position to have a really good season. I think what getting it done means is playing inside of the scheme, playing inside of the offense, and delivering the ball efficiently to all of these weapons that Steve Sarkisian has brought to Texas. Keep the chains moving. Far too many times last year, Texas would go out and go 3 and out. Just couldn't consistently keep the ball in their possession. But I think if you go out and distribute the ball efficiently, whether that means taking the short check down stuff. I mean, if they want to play balloon coverage over the top to keep you from throwing it deep, okay. The middle of the field is going to be open, and the short stuff to the outside of the field is going to be open. Get the ball to those playmakers and let them work. And you keep doing that and doing it consistently, and the big plays are going to come. There's way too many outstanding athletes in these offensive skill positions for Texas for that not to be the case. But it can't all be big plays. So again, QB, distribute the ball efficiently. To me, that's what getting it done means for this quarterback crew. Number 2 key is replace 2 NFL draft picks at running back. Most times you would look at this and go, this is a big problem. Most teams that lose 2 guys to the NFL draft from the running back position aren't able to follow it up with anything close to the production that they had with those other 2 guys. So there's that. But the cupboard is super full at Texas. You've got Jonathan Brooks, who got quite a bit of playing time last year. Looked really good last year in the limited amount of playing time he had. You got Keelan Robinson, who I don't think is an everyday guy, every down guy at running back, but he's so versatile, you can put him in a lot of different positions. You got Jaden Blue, who's a very highly rated guy coming out of high school. He can make plays. You got Cedric Baxter, the number 1 running back in the country last year. He's going to figure it out. He can probably go make plays. They moved Savion Red from the slot into the running back position, and he's already, just in the spring game. And again, I don't want to put too much emphasis on the spring game. I'm not saying because you go out and do well in the spring game that means you're going to be a great player, but it's all we have to talk about right now. If you ask me to choose if someone that shows out in the spring game has a legit chance of making that something they do on Saturdays during the fall, the only thing I can really say is, yeah, they probably got a chance to do that. I shouldn't say they don't, right? So really, Texas needs 2 guys out of that big group of talented guys to step up and be that 1-2 punch. Because I think, and maybe it's more than 1-2 punch. I mean, last year, it was the 2 main guys. You had Bijan, you had Roshan, and then you had Keelan. And like I said, towards the end of games, you would see some Jonathan Brooks. So there's probably going to be 2 main guys, and then there's going to be a third that comes in and plays, on a situational type basis. Think Keelan Robinson. But really, they just need 2 guys to step up. And Sark's got to manage all that talent. Toughest thing about having a lot of talent is figuring out a way to get all that talent in the field, keep all those guys engaged, right? Happy's not the right word. I think it's engaged. Make them feel like, not just make them feel like, but put them in situations where they feel like they're contributing to the success that the program is having. And they sort of see a roadmap of what their future could be like there at Texas. That's the challenge for Steve Sarkisian when you start talking about all that talent that he's got at his disposal. Third key is Texas got to make the deep ball great again. You go back to the Major Applewhite, Chris Sims days. Man, those guys threw the ball down the field a lot. And they connected on a lot of plays down the field. And that's what Steve Sarkisian wants to do. His offense sort of is predicated on beating people over the top. They haven't been great at it since Steve Sarkisian got to Tech. They've tried it a ton. I mean, he is. If you're going to say Steve Sarkisian is stubborn about something, that is the one. Well, at least one of the things he is stubborn about is we're going to throw the ball down the field. And it's, 2 years ago with Hudson Card, he struggled with it. Quinn Ewers had some flashes last year, but for the most part, he struggled with it. When he wasn't struggling with it, the receivers were struggling to make adjustments on the ball and struggling to catch the ball. And it just hasn't been a thing that hits for Texas yet. The weapons are all there this year. First of all, they got to protect it, which I think the offensive line is going to be. It was already really good last year. That's another thing. You got to give credit to the entire Texas coaching staff and Kyle Flood for turning around the offensive line problems at the University of Texas. They were really good last year, especially to be so young, inexperienced. They ended up being a really solid unit, and they were, they weren't perfect. They had their moments where you went like, "What in the world is happening?" But as a whole, they improved greatly, and I think they're going to continue to do that. What makes offensive lines great is continuity and experience. And now a lot of those guys have experience. As long as they can keep those guys healthy, they'll have the continuity. I think you'll start to really see Texas's offensive line start to be in the same conversation as, Alabama's and Georgia's and LSU's and Ohio State's. Like these teams that consistently go out and just brutalize defenses with their O-lines. So they got to protect it, and they got to find some playmakers, and they brought in A.D. Mitchell. I think he's that guy. A.D. Mitchell, to me, is what Isaiah Nair was supposed to be last year before he got hurt, which, by the way, Isaiah Nair is recovering. I don't know where he's at in that recovery. My assumption is he'll start to test that thing. He'll start to test that knee, that reconstructed knee, in fall camp. He's a guy that could factor into the deep ball discussion as well. And then you got Jonte Cook and DeAndre Moore, new guys, freshmen that just enrolled this spring. If you watch the spring game, you saw those guys get deep, get behind people. Xavier Worthy is all, even though I don't think Xavier Worthy's game is get down the field and be that big time down the field possession guy like an A.D. Mitchell can be, Xavier Worthy's got the speed to stretch the field. And if you focus too much on A.D. Mitchell, you focus too much on Isaiah Nair, focus too much on Jordan Whittington, who isn't really a deep threat guy. He can get down the field okay, but he's not gonna bust the top off the defense. But you focus on and then J.T. Sanders. Texas's offense, if the quarterback can play within the scheme, play within the game plan, is really hard to defend. So offensively, QB position has to get it done. Got to replace 2 NFL running backs. And got to make the deep ball great again. Early look at the top 25, and this is, I don't know that I've seen any polls outside of this one. This is just the ESPN Football Power Index, I believe it's called, the FPI. Texas is ranked 5th in that. And it's all based on analytics. They got some kind of formula that they say, here's this team's power ranking. I don't know what that means for Texas in terms of where they will end up in the polls. I think I did see one poll where they might have been ranked 10th. Let's just assume this FPI thing is a poll, right? We'll just talk about it from there. I think 5 is way too high for this team. Not that I don't think this team doesn't have the ability to be that type of team, but they just have not done it. I just don't. Maybe it's not fair, and maybe that's just my conservative nature, but I don't understand how you ever put a team like Texas's team in the top 5 of anything. Just because they haven't gone out and done it. Not only that, but Bijan and we just talked about it. You lost your 2 best running backs to the NFL draft. You look at the quarterback position, which in college football, quarterback position is a huge part of success. Ewers hasn't really shown any sign to me that he can be consistently good. He's had flashes, man. We've seen games where you look at Ewers and even just like short samples inside of games where maybe overall he didn't play all that great, but there's these small windows of time where you look at Quinn Ewers and you go, good Lord, man, this dude is just a gunslinger. Alabama is a perfect example. He made some amazing throws in his short time in that game. Texas OU, he made some amazing throws in that game. Great decisions in that game. And then there was bits and pieces in other games where you thought, man, that could be that's what Quinn Ewers can be, but he just hasn't done it consistently. And then the defense lost a lot of key guys as well. I think there's a lot of really good football players returning. I think they're going to have to figure out that interior rotation, because they did lose 2 interior defensive linemen to the draft. They lost a linebacker to the draft. Thank God that the should have been Big 12 Player of the Year came back to play linebacker. Secondary, got some transfers coming in that look like they could be difference makers on that defense. But again, I don't know that we really know what we're going to get in this Texas team, other than it's talented. I think talent-wise and depth-wise, this is a really good team. This is a team. It's the most talented and deep team since 2018? Was that the year they beat Georgia? Won 10 games, beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. That's what this team could be. And maybe even a little bit better. Just a lot of question marks. So to me, number 5, that kind of seems high. I'm not a huge fan of preseason polls anyway. I don't know how the movement in college football is so much, especially now with the transfer portal. I mean, I guess it's always fun to speculate, and it gives people a reason to write something, and it gives people a reason to talk about something, but I think very rarely does the season go the way preseason polls think they should go. Ohio State, Bama, Georgia, and LSU round out the top 4, just ahead of Texas, in that order. It's kind of crazy. Ohio State's the number 1 ranked power team. They lost their quarterback. Bama's number 2. I don't even know if Nick Saban knows who his quarterback's going to be next year. Georgia, same thing with quarterback. I don't know who the Georgia quarterback's going to be. If it's that kid that came in and played behind Stetson Bennett in the national championship game, to me, and I know it's a small window, but he looked way more talented than Stetson Bennett. And then LSU. I guess I understand the hype with LSU to a point, but I also don't get it to a point. Like, I mean, I know they beat Alabama at home, but I don't know. I just didn't. Again, I think they're the type of team that can be really good, but I don't know that I stake my claim to it and say, yeah, LSU's the 4th ranked team in the country. Again, this is all analytics, and I have no idea. I have no idea how ESPN's FPI works. Maybe I'll dig into that and do a show about that. But anyway, there it is. Texas ranked top 5 in the ESPN FPI. They were ranked 10th, I believe, in another poll, which I still think is too high. For me, I think the ideal spot for Texas is maybe mid-teens, 15-ish, tops. They're going to have opportunities to play teams to bump that up. We've seen it a million times. It's not where you start in college football. You keep winning, you're going to move up. All right. So I get accused of being called a hater all the time for talking about Coach Prime, and I promise you guys I have nothing against Coach Prime. It's just that Coach Prime is in the middle of a whole lot of college football stuff right now. I have a podcast about college sports. I would say my major area of interest is college football. So I'm going to talk about Coach Prime when Coach Prime does something that's worthy of talking about. And this one has nothing to do with recruiting necessarily. This is about Coach Prime saying that he's disappointed in the 31 NFL teams that did not draft an HBCU player. So Coach Prime goes into, and I don't know the context. He may have been asked a question. I don't know. All I saw was a video clip of Coach Prime saying he's disappointed in the 31 NFL teams that didn't draft an HBCU player. And I don't even know what that means. Is he trying to insinuate that somehow the NFL has something against HBCU players? Or is it just Coach Prime trying to do his part to help HBCUs? Only he really knows. But it's interesting that a guy that just committed genocide against the Colorado Buffaloes football roster and the same guy that bailed out on an HBCU is worried that the NFL is not giving the HBCU players the due they deserve. The NFL is going to draft who they think are the best players, period. The NFL does not care if the player is black, white, Hispanic, Oriental, Asian, Indian, whatever other nationalities, races, ethnic groups you can think of. The NFL does not care. The NFL will let players stay in the NFL that continuously break league rules. They'll let players stay in the NFL that have committed violent acts against other human beings outside of the football field, off the football field. If the NFL thought there were other players at the HBCUs that could come in and help them play or help them win games, they would have got drafted, Deion. And this is the part I do not like about Deion. Again, everybody's talking about, oh, you're just a hate. I see it every day. Anytime I talk about Deion and put a video up on TikTok about it, and again, I'm not talking about Deion. I'm talking about the situation Deion is in. And I'm talking about when we're talking about the recruiting deal at Colorado, that's a huge story. As far as, it's an unprecedented thing that's happened at the University of Colorado. So just because I talk about it and just because I don't see or don't believe that all of that is positive the way other people do, doesn't mean I'm a hater of Deion. But this is Deion's problem. And if people want other people to stop hating on Deion should back off of this whole self-promoting style he's got. And again, I'm not saying that in a negative way. But the fact is, Deion Sanders has always been, he's prime time, baby. He's been prime time since before he got drafted into the NFL. He's a dude that's going to always talk. He's going to always self-promote. And what comes with self-promoting is when things don't go well or when there's a perception of something negative, people are going to talk about it. I've had comments, you wouldn't be saying this about other coaches. Well, maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't. Because maybe that other coach, I don't even know who the hell it is because he's not on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, every social media platform on the planet. He probably doesn't have a documentary going on in the background about what's going on. He didn't show up at his new school telling all these other kids that are sitting in the auditorium that they're not good enough to be there, and he's bringing his own baggage, and it's Louis Vuitton, and y'all are freaking Prado or whatever. You get my point. If you're going to put yourself constantly in the limelight, taking criticism is part of that. Just like me. I'm just a normal dude, but I decided one day, hey, I want to do a podcast. I'm interested in doing that. So I started doing a podcast, and I started videoing the podcast, started putting clips up on TikTok. By me doing that, I open myself up to criticism, and I get criticism all the time, and that's okay. The cult of Deion needs to understand that if their leader is going to constantly put himself out there and always wear sunglasses inside the way Deion always wears sunglasses inside, people are going to follow that, and they're gonna wait to see what happens next. And if there's even the slightest perception that it's a negative thing that's happening, maybe even there's guys out there on these social media platforms that talk about Deion 20 times more than I do. They talk about Colorado 100 times more than I do. So it's not like I'm sitting out here talking about Deion all the time. But I'm gonna talk about the major stories, and to me, this one's a major deal. It's kind of like a hypocritical thing for Deion Sanders to say, and he knows better. He played in the NFL. He knows damn well that the NFL does not care about where you went to college. Does not care about what your skin color is. It barely cares that you're a model citizen. And I use that term loosely. If you can play, you got to mess up really bad for the NFL to turn its back on you. Join us next week. We'll do the bullpen. Matter of fact, we're gonna do the bullpen in a couple days. We're gonna talk about that Kansas series for Texas baseball. We'll talk about the last Big 12 series for Texas, which will come in 2 weekends against West Virginia. And then join us again from the cheap seats probably next week. I'm gonna try to have a special guest. I don't know if you guys have seen the Spurs Up show. Cat out of South Carolina. Does a lot of the same stuff I do, except for South Carolina sports. We're going to try to get him on the show. Subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you don't like to go to those places, you can check out horntakespodcast.buzzsprout.com. The link is in my bio on TikTok. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find me on TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook at Horntakes. If you feel like you need to email me, you can hit me at horntakespodcast@gmail.com with all your comments, questions, criticisms, and concerns. I love them all. Hook 'em.